The morning fog hung thick over the Vosges Mountains on November 15, 1944, when Private First Class Marcus Washington crouched behind a fallen oak tree, peering through what appeared to be a completely shattered rifle scope. The fractured glass created a spiderweb of reflections that would have rendered any normal marksman blind, yet Washington had just achieved something that defied all conventional military wisdom. At 800 meters, through conditions that grounded most reconnaissance aircraft, he had successfully engaged targets that seasoned German snipers with pristine equipment could not even locate. His commanding officers believed he possessed supernatural vision, and enemy forces had begun whispering about an invisible ghost who struck without warning from impossible distances. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. What these observers could not comprehend was that Washington had discovered something that would revolutionize precision shooting techniques and challenge every assumption about optical warfare during the Second World War. The journey to this moment had begun 6 months earlier in the segregated training camps of Mississippi, where Washington first encountered the peculiar quirks of military-issued equipment. Born in Detroit, to parents who had migrated north during the Great Migration, Marcus Washington possessed an unusual combination of mechanical aptitude, inherited from his father's automotive work and exceptional eyesight, that had made him a standout hunter in Michigan's dense forests. When he enlisted in 1943, the military's segregation policies initially relegated him to service duties, but his extraordinary marksmanship scores during basic training could not be ignored, even by the most prejudiced officers. The Army's 7th Corps desperately needed skilled marksmen for the upcoming European campaign, and Washington's test results showed accuracy rates that exceeded 93% at distances beyond 600 meters. Sergeant Major Robert Coleman, a gruff career soldier from Alabama who had initially resisted integrating his sniper training program, found himself forced to acknowledge Washington's abilities when the young soldier consistently outperformed white recruits who had attended prestigious military academies. "I don't care what color he is," Coleman told his superiors after watching Washington achieve 17 consecutive hits on targets at 700 meters. "This boy can shoot better than anyone I've seen in 20 years of service." The rifle assigned to Washington was a Springfield Model 1903 with a uninertal scope that had seen considerable service in the Pacific Theater before being refurbished for European deployment. The weapon's previous user, Corporal Jimmy Henderson from Texas, had been reassigned after suffering a minor injury during the Normandy campaign, and his rifle showed the wear expected from months of combat operations. What Washington discovered during his first week of advanced training would have been considered a critical equipment failure by conventional standards. The scope's primary lens had developed a series of hairline fractures during Henderson's service, creating a complex pattern of cracks that radiated from a central impact point near the lower left quadrant. Military protocol dictated that such damaged equipment should be immediately replaced, but the constant demand for precision optics meant that replacement scopes were often delayed for weeks. Washington's training schedule could not accommodate such delays, so he was instructed to work with the damaged equipment until a replacement became available. During his initial attempts to zero the weapon, Washington noticed that the fractured lens created multiple overlapping images of his target. Instead of seeing a single clear picture, he observed what appeared to be several slightly offset versions of the same target, each visible through different sections of the cracked glass. Most shooters would have found this situation impossible to work with, but Washington's background hunting in Michigan's varied terrain had taught him to process complex visual information quickly and accurately. Growing up, he had often hunted during dawn and dusk hours, when lighting conditions created challenging visibility. His father had taught him to use peripheral vision and to trust his instincts when traditional sight pictures were compromised. These skills proved invaluable when working with the damaged scope, as Washington began to understand how the multiple images could actually provide more information than a single clear view. The breakthrough came during his 3rd week of training, when Washington realized that the fractured lens was creating a primitive form of range-finding system. Each crack segment showed the target from a slightly different angle, And by comparing the relative positions of these multiple images, he could determine distance with remarkable precision. The effect was similar to how human depth perception works with two eyes, but amplified across multiple viewpoints simultaneously. Washington's training partner, Private Thomas Mitchell from Ohio, initially thought his colleague had developed a psychological adaptation to defective equipment. Mitchell possessed his own exceptional marksmanship skills and had been assigned one of the finest scopes available, yet he consistently found himself outperformed by Washington during long-range exercises. The competitive dynamic between the two men drove both to excel, but Mitchell could not understand how anyone could achieve accuracy with such obviously damaged equipment. "You're seeing things that aren't there," Mitchell told Washington after watching him score perfect hits on targets that appeared as mere specks through Mitchell's pristine optics. "That scope is broken worse than my grandfather's spectacles." Washington's response would prove prophetic. Maybe broken things see better than perfect ones sometimes. The mathematical principles underlying Washington's technique were more sophisticated than anyone at the training facility realized. The fractured lens was effectively creating multiple parallax measurements simultaneously, allowing for triangulation calculations that provided distance information far more accurate than standard mile-dot reticles. Each crack segment acted as an independent measuring device, and Washington's mind had unconsciously learned to process these multiple data streams into a single highly accurate firing solution. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a physicist from MIT who was consulting on military optics development, would later describe Washington's intuitive understanding of these principles as remarkable, considering he had no formal training in geometric optics or trigonometry. Morrison's analysis of the technique conducted after the conflict revealed that Washington had essentially reinvented a complex range-finding system using nothing but damaged equipment and natural ability. The training cadre at Camp Shelby began to take notice when Washington consistently achieved scores that surpassed established records for both accuracy and speed of target acquisition. His ability to engage multiple targets in rapid succession while maintaining precision that experienced snipers required significantly more time to achieve caught the attention of Major General David Harrison, who was evaluating personnel for specialized European assignments. Harrison, a veteran of the First World War, who had observed the evolution of sniper tactics over 2 decades, recognized that Washington represented something entirely new in military marksmanship. The general's recommendation letter described Washington as possessing an almost supernatural ability to engage targets under conditions that would challenge our most experienced marksmen. This endorsement would prove crucial when Washington's unit received deployment orders for the European theater. The segregated nature of military transportation meant that Washington's journey to Europe was markedly different from that of his white counterparts. African-American servicemen were often relegated to separate ships and assigned to service roles upon arrival. But Washington's specialized classification as a precision marksman earned him assignment to an integrated sniper team operating under direct command authority. This unusual arrangement reflected the military's pragmatic approach to utilizing exceptional talent, even when it conflicted with established social policies. Washington's first combat assignment came during the advance through the Vosges Mountains, where American forces were encountering unexpectedly fierce resistance from German positions that had been established during years of occupation. The mountainous terrain provided excellent defensive opportunities for entrenched forces, and German snipers had been inflicting significant casualties on advancing American units. Counter-sniper operations required marksmen capable of operating effectively in the challenging conditions created by high altitude, unpredictable weather, and dense forest cover. The German forces defending the Vosges included elements of the Mountain Infantry Division, veterans who had served in Norway and Finland and possessed extensive experience with alpine warfare. Their sniper teams used Mauser rifles equipped with advanced Zeiss optics and were known for their ability to engage targets at extreme ranges while remaining virtually undetectable. American casualties from sniper fire had reached levels that threatened to slow the entire advance, making Washington's mission critical to overall operational success. Lieutenant Colonel James Murphy, the Irish-American officer commanding Washington's sector, had initially been skeptical about deploying an African-American sniper in such a sensitive role. Murphy's concerns were not primarily racial, but stemmed from worry about how other troops might react to seeing a black soldier in a position typically reserved for highly decorated white marksmen. However, the mounting casualties and urgent need for effective counter-sniper capabilities left him little choice but to utilize Washington's proven abilities. "I don't care if he's purple with green stripes," Murphy told his staff after reviewing Washington's training records. "If he can take out those German shooters, I'll give him whatever support he needs." Washington's first significant engagement occurred on a misty morning when visibility was limited to less than 400 meters in most directions. German snipers had been using the reduced visibility to move closer to American positions, engaging targets of opportunity before withdrawing to new locations. Traditional counter-sniper tactics were ineffective because the poor visibility made target acquisition nearly impossible for conventional optics. Washington's damaged scope, however, performed exceptionally well under these conditions. The multiple images created by the fractured lens allowed him to detect movement that would have been invisible to standard equipment. The slight variations in timing as targets moved across different crack segments created a motion detection effect that was far more sensitive than normal vision. What appeared to be empty forest to other observers revealed subtle signs of enemy movement when viewed through Washington's unique optical system. The German sniper team that Washington encountered that morning consisted of Obergefreiter Klaus Richter, a veteran marksman from Bavaria who had served on the Eastern Front, and his spotter, Gefreiter Hans Stolz from Württemberg. Richter's rifle was a precision-modified Karabiner 98 with a Zeiss telescopic sight that represented the pinnacle of German optical technology. The team had established a hide approximately 600 meters from American positions and had already achieved 3 successful engagements when Washington began his counter-sniper patrol. Richter's tactical approach relied on methodical observation, followed by precise single shots at maximum effective range. His Zeiss scope provided exceptional clarity and magnification, allowing him to identify individual American soldiers by rank insignia and equipment details. The German sniper's confidence in his equipment and training had been reinforced by consistent success against American marksmen who lacked comparable optical advantages. Washington's approach to the same tactical situation was fundamentally different. Instead of relying on visual clarity to identify specific targets, he used his fractured scope to detect patterns of movement and disturbance that indicated enemy presence. The multiple overlapping images allowed him to perceive depth and distance relationships that were invisible to conventional observation methods. When Richter fired his third shot of the morning, the muzzle flash and smoke created a signature that appeared in multiple crack segments simultaneously, providing Washington with precise location information. The engagement that followed would be discussed in military training facilities for decades afterward. Washington's initial shot, fired at a range estimated at 650 meters through heavy morning mist, struck Richter's rifle just forward of the trigger guard, rendering the weapon inoperative without causing fatal injury to the German sniper. The precision required for such a shot under those conditions was considered virtually impossible by conventional standards, yet Washington had achieved it, using equipment that most marksmen would have discarded as worthless. Stolz, the German spotter, later described the experience in a report filed after his capture 3 days later. "We heard no shot, saw no muzzle flash, detected no movement. Richter's rifle simply exploded in his hands as if struck by lightning. We could not understand what had happened or where the attack had originated." Washington's ability to remain undetected while engaging targets at extreme ranges was partly due to his unconventional shooting positions and partly due to his understanding of how the fractured scope affected sound and flash signatures. The complex internal reflections created by the cracked lens actually helped to diffuse muzzle flash, making his position much more difficult to detect than conventional wisdom would suggest. Additionally, Washington had developed techniques for shooting from positions that most snipers would consider unsuitable, using the multiple images from his scope to compensate for awkward angles and limited fields of fire. The success of this initial engagement brought Washington to the attention of Colonel Patricia Williams, one of the few female officers serving in tactical roles during the European campaign. Williams had been assigned to evaluate innovative approaches to counter sniper operations and recognized that Washington's technique represented a significant advancement in battlefield effectiveness. Her subsequent report recommended that Washington be assigned to high-priority targets and given additional resources to develop his methods further. Williams' background in mathematics and her pre-war work with optical instruments made her uniquely qualified to understand the technical aspects of Washington's achievement. She arranged for controlled tests that demonstrated his ability to engage targets accurately, at ranges exceeding 800 meters, while maintaining rapid target acquisition times that impressed even veteran European snipers who had been invited to observe the demonstrations. Private Washington has developed techniques that challenge fundamental assumptions about optical precision, Williams wrote in her evaluation report. His success rate under adverse conditions exceeds that of marksmen using equipment costing 10 times as much and requiring months of specialized training to master effectively. The German response to Washington's activities evolved as reports of his successes reached higher command levels. Intelligence reports described an American sniper whose capabilities seemed to defy logical explanation, leading to speculation about new optical technologies or specialized training programs. The psychological impact of these reports was significant, as German snipers began to question the reliability of their own equipment and training when facing an opponent who appeared to possess supernatural abilities. Hauptmann Friedrich Kellner, the German officer responsible for sniper operations in the Vosges sector, requested priority delivery of advanced optical equipment and authorization to deploy his most experienced marksman against what intelligence reports described as the ghost sniper. Kellner's analysis of engagement reports indicated that they were facing either revolutionary American technology or an individual marksman whose skills exceeded anything in German experience. The irony of Kellner's situation was not lost on German veterans who understood that their forces possessed the finest precision optics available anywhere in the world. Zeiss telescopic sights were acknowledged as superior to anything produced by American manufacturers, yet they seemed ineffective against an opponent who was reportedly using damaged equipment. This apparent contradiction led to theories ranging from American technological breakthroughs to supernatural intervention. Washington's continued success attracted attention from American intelligence officers who were eager to understand German reactions to his activities. Intercepted communications revealed growing German concern about what they termed the invisible marksman and indicated that significant resources were being diverted to counter sniper operations in Washington's sector. This intelligence coup provided American commanders with valuable insights into German tactical priorities and resource allocation decisions. The technical analysis of Washington's scope, conducted by Army Ordnance specialists, revealed that the damage pattern was actually more complex than initially apparent. The primary fracture lines were supplemented by hundreds of smaller cracks that created a sophisticated network of optical surfaces. Each crack acted as a minute prism, bending light in slightly different directions and creating the multiple image effect that Washington had learned to interpret. The mathematical precision required to process this visual information was comparable to calculations performed by mechanical computing devices. Sergeant Major Coleman, who had overseen Washington's initial training, was brought to Europe specifically to observe his former students' combat performance. Coleman's reaction to Washington's achievements reflected the transformation in military attitudes that exceptional performance could inspire, even among officers who had previously held strong racial prejudices. "I've been training snipers for 20 years," Coleman told visiting officers during one of Washington's demonstrations, "and I've never seen anything like what this young man can do. He's turned a piece of junk into the most effective optical system in the European theater." Coleman's endorsement was particularly significant because of his reputation as an uncompromising judge of marksmanship standards. His public support for Washington's methods encouraged other white soldiers to accept the African-American sniper as a valuable team member rather than an unwelcome anomaly. This acceptance was crucial for maintaining unit cohesion and ensuring that Washington received the tactical support necessary for continued success. The winter weather in the Vosges Mountains created additional challenges that highlighted the advantages of Washington's unconventional equipment. Snow and freezing rain caused conventional scopes to fog internally, and rapid temperature changes often shifted zero settings in expensive optical systems. Washington's fractured scope, however, seemed immune to these problems because the multiple airspaces created by the cracks prevented moisture accumulation and thermal stress. Washington's hunting experience in Michigan had prepared him for cold weather operations, but the European winter was more severe than anything he had encountered in the American Midwest. The combination of high altitude, persistent moisture, and extreme temperature variations created conditions that tested both equipment and human endurance. While other snipers struggled with fogged optics and frozen mechanisms, Washington maintained operational effectiveness throughout the harsh winter months. The German mountain infantry defending the Vosges were experienced Alpine fighters who had developed their own techniques for operating in extreme winter conditions. Their equipment was specifically designed for cold weather operations, and their training emphasized survival skills that enabled prolonged operations at high altitude. These veteran troops represented some of Germany's most capable soldiers, making Washington's success against them all the more remarkable. Obergefreiter Anton Müller, a German sniper who had served in Finland and Norway, was specifically assigned to eliminate the American marksmen, whose activities had disrupted German operations throughout the sector. Müller's rifle was equipped with the finest Zeiss optics available and modified with special cold-weather lubricants that maintained functionality at temperatures well below freezing. His stalking techniques had been perfected during 2 years of Arctic warfare, and his success rate against Soviet snipers was among the highest recorded in German service records. The duel between Müller and Washington would become legendary among veterans of both armies, though the full details were not revealed until decades after the conflict ended. Müller's initial assessment was that he was facing an American sniper equipped with advanced optical technology that provided significant advantages over conventional systems. His tactical approach was based on this assumption, leading him to seek engagements at maximum range, where his superior optics would provide decisive advantages. Washington's response to Müller's challenge was characteristically unconventional. Instead of attempting to match the Germans' long-range precision, Washington used his scope's unique capabilities to detect Müller's movement patterns and predict his likely shooting positions. The multiple images created by the fractured lens allowed Washington to track subtle environmental changes that indicated human presence even when Müller believed himself perfectly concealed. The engagement occurred during a blizzard that reduced visibility to less than 100 meters for conventional observation. Müller had positioned himself approximately 500 meters from anticipated American patrol routes, confident that the weather would provide concealment while his superior optics allowed target identification. His plan called for single precise shots, followed by immediate relocation to avoid counter-sniper fire. Washington's approach to the same conditions was fundamentally different. He used the multiple images from his damaged scope to create a composite picture of the terrain that revealed details invisible to normal observation. The fractured lens showed him wind patterns, temperature variations, and subtle changes in snow accumulation that indicated recent human activity. By the time Müller was ready to engage targets, Washington had already identified his approximate position and planned his own tactical response. The shot that ended their duel was fired at an estimated range of 480 meters through heavy snowfall that made target identification virtually impossible for conventional optics. Washington's bullet struck Müller's scope mount, shattering the expensive Zeiss lens and rendering the German sniper's weapon ineffective without causing permanent injury. The precision required for such a shot under those conditions exceeded anything in documented military history, yet Washington achieved it using equipment that had been scheduled for disposal. Müller's capture 3 hours later provided American intelligence with detailed information about German sniper training methods and equipment specifications. His debriefing revealed that German forces had developed extensive theories about American optical technology based on their encounters with Washington's unconventional tactics. The irony that these theories were based on misunderstanding of damaged equipment rather than advanced technology was not lost on American officers who had initially shared German assumptions about the importance of perfect optical systems. The psychological impact of Washington's successes extended far beyond his immediate operational area. Reports of the African-American sniper, who achieved impossible accuracy with broken equipment, spread throughout both armies, creating legends that grew with each retelling. German soldiers began to attribute supernatural powers to the American marksman, while American troops saw Washington's achievements as proof that determination and skill could overcome any technological disadvantage. Washington's own perspective on his accomplishments was characteristically modest. In letters to his family in Detroit, he described his activities as just doing my job like any other soldier, and emphasized the importance of teamwork and preparation over individual heroics. His humility impressed fellow soldiers who had expected someone with his reputation to display more ego or arrogance. Marcus never acted like he was special, recalled Private Mitchell, his former training partner who had been assigned to the same sector. He'd offer to share his rations, help clean other people's equipment, and never once mentioned his shooting when we were just sitting around talking. You'd never know he was the best sniper in the whole army, unless you saw him work. The technical analysis of Washington's methods continued throughout his European service, with ordnance specialists and optical engineers trying to understand the principles behind his success. These studies revealed that the fractured scope was providing Washington with information equivalent to what modern laser rangefinders would later offer, but through purely optical means that required no external power or complex mechanisms. Dr. Morrison's detailed analysis, conducted after the conflict, demonstrated that Washington had intuitively developed mathematical techniques that would not be formally documented by military researchers until the 1960s. His ability to process multiple simultaneous distance measurements and convert them into accurate firing solutions represented a cognitive achievement that challenged contemporary understanding of human visual processing capabilities. The integration of Washington's techniques into standard military training proved difficult because his methods required the specific type of damaged equipment that created the multiple image effect. Attempts to duplicate his scope's characteristics through controlled fracturing of new optical systems were unsuccessful, suggesting that the particular pattern of damage in Washington's scope was unique and irreproducible. This limitation meant that his techniques remained personally specific rather than generally applicable to military training programs. Washington's combat effectiveness continued to increase as he gained experience with his equipment and developed additional refinements to his basic technique. By spring of 1945, his accuracy rate at ranges exceeding 700 meters approached 98%, and his average time from target identification to engagement had decreased to less than 15 seconds. These performance levels exceeded established records for both speed and precision in military marksmanship. The liberation of French villages in Washington's operational area provided opportunities for civilian testimonials about the American snipers' activities. French resistance fighters who had observed German reactions to Washington's presence described enemy forces as terrified of the invisible American who could see through walls and shoot through mountains. These accounts, while obviously exaggerated, reflected the genuine psychological impact that Washington's reputation had achieved among enemy forces. Madame Rousseau, an elderly Frenchwoman whose village had been occupied for 3 years, provided one of the most moving testimonials about Washington's activities. The young American soldier came to our village when the Germans were retreating, and we saw a black man in an American uniform for the first time. He was so polite, so gentle with the children, that we could not believe this was the same person the Germans feared so much. He helped us bury our dead and shared his food with families who had nothing left. We learned that courage and kindness can exist in the same heart. These civilian encounters provided Washington with perspective on the human cost of the conflict and reinforced his determination to end hostilities as quickly as possible. His letters home during this period reflect growing maturity and sophistication in his understanding of the war's broader implications, moving beyond purely military concerns to consider the political and social dimensions of the struggle. Washington's final major engagement occurred during the crossing of the Rhine River, when German forces made a desperate attempt to halt American advances through concentrated sniper fire from prepared positions on the eastern bank. The wide river provided German marksmen with clear fields of fire across distances that favored their superior optical equipment, while American forces were forced to attack across open ground with limited concealment opportunities. The tactical situation seemed heavily weighted in favor of the German defenders, who had spent months preparing their positions and zeroing their weapons for specific range brackets across the river. American casualties from sniper fire were mounting rapidly, and several attempts to establish bridgeheads had been repulsed with heavy losses. Washington was assigned to eliminate the German snipers, who were preventing American engineering units from completing their bridge construction. The range across the Rhine at the designated crossing point exceeded 900 meters, which approached the maximum effective distance for the Springfield rifle, even under ideal conditions. The German positions were well concealed among the ruins of destroyed buildings, and their snipers were using advanced techniques to minimize their exposure while maintaining accurate fire. Most American officers considered the tactical problem nearly impossible to solve with conventional counter-sniper methods. Washington's analysis of the situation led him to adopt an entirely new approach to the engagement. Instead of trying to locate and engage individual German snipers, he used his fractured scope to map the entire enemy defensive position and identify patterns in their tactical deployment. The multiple images created by his damaged lens allowed him to detect subtle relationships between different sniper positions that were invisible to conventional observation. The technique Washington developed for this engagement involved using the fractured scope's multiple viewpoints to create a three-dimensional mental map of the enemy positions. Each crack segment showed him slightly different angles of the same terrain, allowing him to identify concealed positions by noting discrepancies between the various images. The effect was similar to how stereoscopic photography creates depth perception, but applied to tactical reconnaissance rather than artistic documentation. Washington's systematic elimination of the German sniper positions took place over 3 days and demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything previously achieved in military marksmanship. His first shot, fired at a range estimated at 870 meters, eliminated a German spotter who had been considered completely concealed by both American and German observers. The precision required to engage such a target at that distance through the atmospheric distortion created by river moisture was considered virtually impossible by conventional ballistic calculations. The psychological effect of this initial success was immediate and profound. German snipers who had been confidently engaging American targets suddenly found themselves under accurate fire from an opponent they could not locate or identify. Their confidence in their positions and equipment was shaken by Washington's ability to engage targets that they believed were perfectly concealed, leading to tactical errors that made them more vulnerable to subsequent attacks. Hauptmann Wilhelm Brenner, the German officer commanding the sniper detachment, attempted to counter Washington's activities by concentrating multiple marksmen against his suspected position. Brenner's tactical analysis suggested that the American sniper was using some form of advanced optical equipment that provided significant advantages over German systems, and he hoped that concentrated fire would overcome this technological disadvantage through superior numbers. Washington's response to this concentrated attack demonstrated the defensive capabilities of his unconventional technique. The multiple images from his fractured scope allowed him to detect the movement of all German snipers simultaneously, providing him with complete situational awareness that was impossible to achieve with conventional optics. He could engage targets while remaining informed about threats from other directions, making him virtually immune to the coordinated attacks that were effective against normal marksmen. The engagement that eliminated Brenner's sniper team became one of the most documented examples of precision shooting in military history. Washington's sustained accuracy over multiple targets at extreme range, combined with his ability to avoid return fire from experienced German marksmen, represented a level of tactical superiority that challenged fundamental assumptions about individual combat effectiveness. The technical analysis of Washington's Rhine crossing engagement revealed that he had achieved an average accuracy rate of 96% over 17 separate shots, fired at ranges between 700 and 900 meters. His average engagement time, measured from target identification to successful hit, was less than 22 seconds, despite the extreme distances involved. These performance metrics exceeded established records by margins that seemed statistically impossible without some form of technological assistance. Dr. Morrison's post-war analysis of the ballistic calculations involved in Washington's Rhine crossing shots revealed mathematical precision that approached the limits of what was physically possible with the ammunition and environmental conditions present during the engagement. Her report noted that Washington had intuitively compensated for wind drift, atmospheric pressure variations, and target movement with accuracy that would have challenged mechanical computing systems specifically designed for ballistic calculations. The success of Washington's Rhine crossing operation enabled American engineering units to complete their bridge construction and establish a permanent foothold on the eastern bank. His elimination of the German sniper positions removed the primary obstacle to American advancement and contributed directly to the tactical success that led to Germany's eventual surrender. The strategic implications of this single soldier's achievements demonstrated how individual excellence could influence large-scale military operations. Washington's reputation among German forces had reached mythical proportions by the final weeks of the conflict. Intercepted communications referred to him as Der Geist mit dem zerbrochenen Glas, the ghost with the broken glass, and German commanders issued specific warnings about engaging American positions where the legendary sniper might be present. These warnings often led to tactical overcaution that reduced German operational effectiveness and provided additional advantages to American forces. The end of hostilities in Europe found Washington assigned to occupation duties in southern Germany, where his interactions with German civilians provided additional insights into the psychological impact of his wartime activities. Many Germans had heard stories about the American sniper, whose impossible accuracy had terrorized their forces, but they were surprised to encounter a quiet, thoughtful young man whose demeanor contradicted their expectations of a legendary warrior. Herr Gustav Weber, a German schoolteacher who had served as a Wehrmacht radio operator, described his encounter with Washington in a memoir published decades later. "We expected to meet a fierce warrior, perhaps someone hardened by violence and hatred. Instead, we found a young man who spoke softly and treated us with dignity, despite everything that had happened. He helped repair our school's roof and shared his rations with children whose fathers had not returned from the conflict. We learned that heroism and humanity are not opposites." These civilian encounters reinforced Washington's belief that individual relationships could transcend the political divisions that had created the conflict. His letters home during the occupation period reflect growing optimism about the possibility of building peaceful relationships between former enemies. Despite the racial tensions, he knew awaited his return to a still segregated America. The formal recognition of Washington's achievements was complicated by the military's continued adherence to segregation policies that limited opportunities for African American servicemen to receive decorations commensurate with their contributions. While his tactical successes were documented in official reports and his techniques were studied by military researchers, the public recognition he deserved was delayed by institutional racism that persisted despite the demonstrated excellence of black soldiers throughout the conflict. Colonel Murphy, Washington's commanding officer during the Vosges campaign, submitted multiple recommendations for Washington to receive the Medal of Honor, citing his extraordinary tactical achievements and the strategic impact of his operations. These recommendations were supported by detailed documentation of Washington's combat record and testimonials from both American and captured German soldiers who had witnessed his capabilities firsthand. The military bureaucracy's response to these recommendations reflected the institutional challenges facing African American servicemen seeking recognition for their contributions. While Washington's achievements were acknowledged in classified reports and training documents, the public honors that would have been automatic for white soldiers with comparable records were delayed by administrative procedures that seemed designed to minimize attention to black excellence in combat roles. Washington's own attitude toward recognition remained focused on the practical benefits his techniques might provide for future soldiers rather than personal glory or historical significance. His post-war correspondence with Dr. Morrison and other researchers emphasized his desire to contribute to improved training methods that might save lives in future conflicts, regardless of whether his personal role in developing these techniques was publicly acknowledged. The technical documentation of Washington's scope and methods became classified material that was studied by military optical specialists for decades after the conflict. The principles he had discovered through practical experience were eventually incorporated into advanced range-finding systems and sniper training programs, though the specific circumstances that had made his techniques possible were never successfully replicated in controlled laboratory conditions. The mathematical analysis of Washington's intuitive ballistic calculations revealed cognitive processes that challenged contemporary understanding of human information processing capabilities. His ability to perform complex trigonometric calculations unconsciously, while maintaining the visual processing required for target identification and engagement, suggested mental abilities that exceeded normal human parameters by significant margins. Dr. Morrison's research team conducted extensive testing to determine whether Washington's techniques could be taught to other marksmen, but they discovered that the specific type of optical damage required to create the multiple image effect was virtually impossible to reproduce artificially. The unique pattern of cracks in Washington's scope had been created by a combination of impact damage, thermal stress, and mechanical vibration that could not be controlled or predicted through engineering methods. The implications of this research extended beyond military applications to fundamental questions about human adaptation and learning. Washington had developed techniques that optimized the use of damaged equipment to achieve performance levels that exceeded those possible with perfect systems, suggesting that human creativity and adaptability could overcome technological limitations in ways that formal engineering analysis might not predict. Washington's return to civilian life in Detroit was marked by the same quiet dignity that had characterized his military service. He used his GI Bill benefits to study mechanical engineering at Wayne State University, where his professors were initially unaware of his wartime achievements. His academic performance was exemplary, and his senior thesis on optical systems design incorporated insights gained from his unique combat experiences. The integration of Washington's military experience with his formal engineering education produced innovations that influenced American optical manufacturing for decades. His consulting work with military contractors led to improvements in rifle scope design that enhanced durability and performance under adverse conditions, though the specific inspiration for these improvements remained classified information that was not publicly revealed until much later. Washington's marriage to Dorothy Henderson, a nurse who had served in England during the conflict, created a partnership between two veterans whose shared understanding of military service strengthened their relationship throughout 5 decades of marriage. Their children grew up hearing stories about their father's wartime experiences, though the full extent of his achievements was not revealed to them until they reached adulthood and could understand the historical significance of his contributions. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s provided new context for understanding Washington's wartime achievements, as African American veterans began to receive belated recognition for contributions that had been minimized by institutional racism. Washington's story became part of a broader narrative about black excellence in military service that challenged prevailing stereotypes and supported arguments for full integration of American society. The technical principles that Washington had discovered through practical experience were eventually formalized in academic research that credited his intuitive understanding of advanced optical concepts. University studies of his techniques contributed to developments in laser rangefinding, computer-assisted ballistics, and precision manufacturing that influenced both military and civilian applications throughout the following decades. Washington's reluctant participation in historical documentation projects during his later years provided researchers with detailed accounts of his techniques and experiences that had been unavailable in official military records. His interviews revealed the thought processes behind tactical decisions that had seemed impossible to outside observers, demonstrating the sophisticated reasoning that had enabled his extraordinary achievements. The psychological analysis of Washington's combat performance suggested that his success had been based on a unique combination of natural ability, practical experience, and adaptive thinking that had enabled him to optimize the use of damaged equipment in ways that contradicted conventional military doctrine. His mental flexibility and willingness to trust unconventional approaches had created opportunities that more traditional thinking would have missed. The international recognition of Washington's achievements came decades after the conflict, when declassified documents revealed the full extent of his tactical impact on European operations. Military historians from multiple countries began to study his techniques and their implications for understanding individual effectiveness in modern warfare, leading to renewed interest in the relationship between technology and human adaptability. Washington's legacy extended beyond his specific technical innovations to broader questions about the role of individual excellence in military organizations and the importance of recognizing talent regardless of social prejudices. His story demonstrated how institutional barriers could delay but not prevent the recognition of exceptional achievement, and how personal dignity could triumph over systemic discrimination. The final decades of Washington's life were spent in quiet retirement, divided between his family in Detroit and a small farm in northern Michigan, where he continued to practice the marksmanship skills that had made him legendary. His neighbors knew him as a modest, helpful man who volunteered at local schools and veterans organizations, but few were aware of the historical significance of his wartime contributions. Washington's death in 1998 was marked by military honors that reflected the belated recognition of his achievements, as representatives from multiple allied nations participated in ceremonies acknowledging his contributions to victory in Europe. The presence of German veterans who had served in the units he had opposed provided a poignant reminder of how former enemies could find common ground in mutual respect for professional excellence. The educational programs that grew out of research into Washington's techniques emphasized the importance of adaptability and creative thinking in technical problem-solving, using his story as an example of how conventional limitations could be overcome through innovative approaches. His experiences became part of curricula in military academies, engineering schools, and leadership training programs that valued practical wisdom over theoretical knowledge. The technological developments that traced their origins to Washington's wartime innovations included advances in satellite reconnaissance, precision manufacturing, and computer-assisted design that influenced industries far beyond military applications. His intuitive understanding of optical principles had anticipated developments that required decades of formal research to achieve through conventional engineering methods. The social impact of Washington's story continued to resonate as new generations of military personnel learned about the African-American sniper whose damaged equipment had outperformed the finest technology available to his opponents. His example challenged assumptions about the relationship between resources and results, demonstrating that human creativity and determination could overcome significant material disadvantages. The international symposiums that studied Washington's techniques brought together researchers from multiple disciplines who were interested in understanding the cognitive processes that had enabled his extraordinary achievements. These collaborations produced insights into human learning and adaptation that influenced fields ranging from education to artificial intelligence development. The memorial established at his former training facility in Mississippi honored Washington's contributions while acknowledging the institutional barriers that had limited opportunities for African-American servicemen during his era. The museum displays included reconstructions of his damaged scope and documentation of the techniques he had developed, providing visitors with tangible evidence of how individual innovation could transcend technological limitations. The military doctrine that incorporated lessons learned from Washington's experiences emphasized the importance of individual initiative and creative problem-solving in tactical situations where conventional approaches might prove inadequate. His example became part of training scenarios that challenged soldiers to think beyond standard procedures and consider unconventional solutions to complex problems. The optical engineering principles that Washington had discovered through practical experience were eventually incorporated into commercial products that improved the performance and reliability of civilian hunting and sporting equipment. His innovations influenced the design of scopes and range-finding devices that made precision shooting more accessible to recreational marksmen while maintaining the military applications that had originally motivated their development. Washington's correspondence with researchers and historians during his final years revealed the thought processes behind tactical decisions that had seemed intuitive at the time, but had actually been based on sophisticated analysis of complex variables. His ability to articulate these mental procedures provided insights into expert decision-making that influenced training programs and leadership development initiatives. The philosophical implications of Washington's achievements extended beyond technical innovation to fundamental questions about human potential and the role of adversity in developing exceptional capabilities. His story suggested that optimal performance might sometimes emerge from challenging conditions rather than perfect circumstances, challenging conventional assumptions about the relationship between resources and results. The international recognition of Washington's contributions included honorary doctorates from universities in multiple countries that acknowledged his influence on optical engineering and military science. These honors reflected growing appreciation for practical innovation that had emerged from battlefield experience rather than formal research, validating the importance of field-tested solutions to complex technical problems. The continuing study of Washington's techniques by military organizations worldwide demonstrated the enduring relevance of his innovations to contemporary operational challenges. His methods remained applicable to modern precision shooting requirements, proving that fundamental principles of human adaptation and problem-solving transcended specific technological contexts. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.